Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept study. We are covering general compensatory quotations for thought, speech, and or action, pages 422 through 431. Getting started, I'm just gonna share a quote and really a relevant quote that applies to every person with color in their skin on the planet. A quote I definitely appreciate, and it's on page 422, and it states, "To a victim of white supremacy, a non-white person, the whole world is a death camp, and every white supremacist, racist man, and racist woman is a camp commander." I remember learning about the concept that the entire planet is a concentration camp, prison camp for Black people. And once I got that in my brain computer, I was like, wow, it makes so much sense, because I did live in the so-called ghetto. They definitely call the place I grew up the ghetto, and it is a place full of misery and a whole bunch of incorrect happenings. So it allowed me to begin to understand that the hood and pretty much every single place that Black people reside is some sort of death camp. Every single corner is a liquor store. This is well known. Inside those liquor stores, many poisons, many death-producing poisons. And also we have race soldiers, can also probably be classified as Nazis, who patrol the concentration camps and their war vehicles called police cars and whatnot. So yeah, I really appreciate having this concept, this truth in my brain computer, that I am most certainly living in a death camp operated by racist man and racist woman. I'll pause there to see if others would like to share or comment on what's been said.
When I read that quote that you just read, the first thing came to mind is racism is global, and how non-white people are experiencing racism, white supremacy in other countries, other states, all around the world. That's it for now.
Most certainly. A global.
I want to.
Oh, please go ahead. Wait. Yeah, global system. Go ahead.
Yes. Also, just when I read that, and you brought up, one of the things I thought about was what we call the hood. And I feel like too, the reason why I'm thinking about this quote right now is because when I think about the victims who live in quote unquote the hood, or who rep the hood, or just excited, and they almost made these campgrounds as something to be I don't want to say proud of, but kind of just comfort, oh, I'm from the hood, or it's okay, I came from the hood, or I'm still in it. But that's a great point, Miss Helen, that you mentioned. If you think of a global level of these campgrounds, it's almost almost identical. They all have this sort of food insecurity, housing insecurity. It's almost this weird thing. They just look a little bit different. And I think also people speak about them differently as well. But it's just very interesting that it's referred to where victims live it's a camp area or death camp, so it's very interesting.
Thanks for sharing. Another quote from page 422. "If you have hands, feet, hearing, and eyesight, think about what it would be like not to have any of them. count your blessings. You are likely very wealthy in many ways. And I like this quote, really appreciate this one, because, I do appreciate my eyesight, hearing, and feelings, and the ability to think, and all that stuff. I would always, growing up, think to myself, wow, not being able to see or being deaf would kind of suck. Um, Especially when just I would just think these thoughts every now and then. So this quote is a reminder that I don't need tons of material trinkets or material fabrics to feel wealthy. I'm wealthy in my health. So really pleasant quote right there. The last one I'll share from this page is 422 again. There's reasons to believe that so-called homosexuality and lesbianism could be one of the strongest expressions of self-hate. And I was like, this is a very powerful quote. And I think according to racist and counter-racist logic, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, that's all from 422. Other folks have any perhaps any quotes from 422 that I didn't share that they want to share?
Yes. There are two that I have. So I liked 422. Ladies, never be ashamed of your vaginas. It is superb real estate. I thought that was a pretty good one. Especially given the climate with anti-sexuals tending to, for one reason or another, wanting to be men or not, or wanting to be ladies. I think it is it's interesting, really. I'm trying to decode what he means by it is superb real estate, though. I have maybe a couple ideas, but I'm not entirely sure. But I think that's a great quote, because oftentimes in the system of racism, white supremacy, women are, especially non-white females, especially Black females, are made to feel ashamed for having vaginas or for being women or having the traits and qualities that make them women, which is proof of the insanity that we live in. And then moving on, every non-white female should be fiercely feminine and should do all she can to use her femininity constructively. And I think that this is it's also a big one. I feel that with this one though, I would kind of need maybe I have some ideas, but what does it mean to be feminine? What does it mean what is femininity? I think that that differs for some people. I know I have an idea of what it means to be femininity, but I don't know if all non-white females or other non-white people feel the same way about that. And especially given how things are have been going lately, with all this talk of femininity and masculine women. I think that this is an important quote, because we definitely need more feminine energy, just out there for non-white people. So those are my two quotes off of 422.
Thank you, anyone?
Also, somebody wanted to, if they had an idea for what superb real estate was, I'd love to hear it.
Folks, I personally do not have an idea of what he means by that. Definitely probably a good question to ask Neely Fuller.
That is a wonderful idea. I haven't had a question for him for weeks. I'm gonna write that down.
I have the word guide, and state, white, racial, sexual, use this term to apply to the vagina and associated sexual organs of the body of a white female person during the existence of the system of white supremacy, racism. I don't think he's talking about it in this sense if he's talking about black, non-white females. So that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is very interesting. Yeah, I remember that definition. But that's real estate, right? This is superb real estate.
He said that is superior property.
So, you know, that's that. 423, work, and more work should be welcome. Constructive work will always help make you a better person than you thought you could be. Constructive work should be regarded as fun. I think, wow, this is a very positive, constructive, and helpful mentality to practice, to carry, to hold true, however you want to say put it. I think this is a great quote and very significant. And if non-white people had this mentality, we could do a lot of problem solving, and this race problem would surely become nothing to us. Surely be solved. As again, 423, as long as the system of white supremacy racism has not been replaced with the system of justice and balance between people, the non-white people of the known universe will continue to function as worthless people. And I'm like, this sounds correct. It sounds likely that white people will continue to allow and design situations for non-white people, especially Black people, to just be throwaway people to live in environments surrounded by total filth, poverty, and degradation. Like it's so incorrect that I can find so many just documentaries about all the incorrect things going on in the area of the world known as Africa and the Middle East involving children. So I'm like, yeah, these people definitely have no value because they're being allowed to be trafficked. They're being allowed to become addicted to drugs at like at super early ages. Not that anyone should ever be allowed to be addicted to drugs, but people are getting high of jet fuel in various parts of the world, and this is because white supremacy has made non-white people just worthless, and worthless people do things like things like that. It's the conditioning. So I think yeah, the problem needs to be solved because so many non-white people are thrown away, meet such awful demise. And it's incorrect. It shouldn't be happening. It's very simple. It shouldn't be happening. And correct. Every person should be correct thinking enough to be like, yeah, this black male is correct. That shouldn't be happening. Yeah. The last one from 423. No person is ever too young or too old to learn anything that is of constructive value. And this quote reminds me of a really funny and probably tragic interaction that I had recently. I was at the shop, and this lady, she was like, "How are you doing?" And I was like, still learning. And she was like, "Oh, why?" And I was like, "Because it's something everyone should be doing." But yeah, it was just funny that was her response to like, why would I be still learning? So just a small glimpse into what's been done to the minds of people worldwide by the system of white supremacy. Now I'm gonna mute for folks to share their comments and share their quotes.
Yeah, I have one. Other than the two that you stated, or the two of them you stated already, but it's, if you are ashamed to be seen naked, ask yourself what you would do if garments were not provided for you. I thought this was so powerful. I can hear it myself. Oh, okay. I thought this was powerful because just thinking about this whole notion of like, oh, you must be like fully covered, or if you show skin or if you show anything, you're seen a certain way, especially like these like society standards. But then also as like a personal thing too, like if like at one point in life I wasn't like fully 100% like, oh, I love my body, blah 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 blah. But now I just like, I love it anyways. But I think it's just like due to like society standards and stuff, but really just, I don't know, I just associated that one with how our bodies are represented, whether that's in the media or that's just like really just put into our brain computer as something to be ashamed of or something to not love on or whatever it is. So I thought that was very powerful.
Thank you, Ms. Naya. Anyone else have?
On page 424, do not seek or accept praise, no matter how great your accomplishment may be. And something that I want to attach to that is I believe in encouraging. I understand the not praising because we haven't solved the problem, the issue of injustice, racism, white supremacy. But I do believe in encouragement. I think that we need that. That's all.
Well said. I think encouragement is very constructive. Mr. Ray 1/0, were you going to share?
Yes, I'm taking the quote from page 423, which says, use spirit to find logic. Spirit was a gift to you personally. Logic was put in the universe for you to find and put to use. Correct use of logic will produce constructive results. And that really stuck out to me, mainly because, as a Black male, any victim, but as a Black male in particular, a lot of things are going to happen that will cause us to, we should mentally react before emotionally responding. And as long as we continue to alleviate our confusion, we'll keep implementing those tactics. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Ray 1/0.
I had one on 423 as well, where it says, it can be said that everybody is inferior to somebody at some time in something. What exactly is the correct procedure for proving who is inferior and who is superior? I thought that this was an important quote because it got me thinking about specifically all the times where white people have tried to prove how inferior Black non-white people are to them. Through various means, whether it's measuring the size of their skulls or in academics. But then also, the Olympics is coming up right now, and a lot of Black people, a lot of victims will get on TV and show how, like, oh, look at how well Black people are, how fast they can run, how well they can do these things. So it just got me thinking about, there are definitely a lot of physically capable non-white people, and there's also a lot of physically capable white people. So exactly how do you go about who is inferior, who is superior? throughout history, the evidence has shown that when Black people, non-white people are afforded the same opportunities to learn in a environment that is constructive, that they tend to excel in those environments. And when they are not, they tend to excel, but when they are denied those kind of opportunities and those resources, you know, they do not excel. So, and I think that just goes for anybody in any kind of, no matter if you're white or non-white. So I thought that the question was also a very good one. So what exactly is the procedure for trying to prove that? You know, I don't think there is a procedure for that. I don't think you can prove if somebody's inferior or superior to them without taking into account all the external factors or all the things outside of their control that have contributed to their so-called inferiority or superiority. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kweku. Thanks for sharing. All very definitely thought-provoking insight being shared from everyone. 424. When asked, "How are you?" you can say less than perfect. When asked, "How are things?" you can say out of balance. And I definitely appreciate this quote as well, and this suggestion as well, because things are most certainly out of balance. And I think I'm saying things like saying I'm less than perfect is much less intense. The saying what I tend to say sometimes, which is under attack. People ask me how I'm doing, and sometimes I say I'm under attack, especially if I don't know the person. But yeah, this is a great like suggestion to respond, and I look for opportunities to say that these are out of balance, because they really are, and I think people need to think more about why things are so incorrect on planet Earth, and why we allow them to be so incorrect. Minimize, again, this is 424. Minimize all unnecessary conversation. Be brief and constructive. Before saying anything, think about what you intend to accomplish by saying what you're about to say. Practice talking to people only when they indicate that they want to talk to you. Another constructive suggestion. I think due to my immense brain trashing, severe retardation, I must make better practice with this quote, and practicing what this quote recommends. Um, I definitely don't talk to people unless it's in a digital realm without that indication. But I'm sure there's many moments in my life where I could have thought more before I said something, and also have what I'm saying have be intended to accomplishing a goal. So very constructive quote. And the last one from 424. In a non-just world, no person is good. All people are corrupt. People who believe that they are good are more likely to become more corrupt. Um, and when I thought about this, it reminded me of race soldiers, and how they're trained that they're like the good guys, because they go out and hunt the bad guys, the bandits, the robbers, the rapists, and they stop criminals, and they're painted in society as the good guys, but they're often very incorrect thinking people who are quite monsters. And also reminds me of guess white ideology. Reminds me of Deductible Negro and the concepts of honor that were mentioned in that text, and how white people had this false sense of honor, while at the same time, raping slaves and eating slaves. So it was just like, and a person with so-called honor would be viewed as also a good person. So yeah, we shouldn't be people as good people or not are bad people. People are just people's are either correct by what they're doing or incorrect by what they're doing, thinking. So really appreciate this quote. Other folks like to share?
Hello, can I be heard?
You can.
Okay, kind of want to go back to page 422 about that quote about so-called homosexuality and lesbianism and self-hate. And I've witnessed this within associate of mine, non-white black male, got the operation to change gender. And now that this person has changed their gender, they're excelling. They're doing considerably wonderful. And yeah, and just to think to go through with that type of operation, like you really, really must. I mean, because the recovery time is ridiculous. It's really long. It's really hard on the body. Had to have like around the clock care, and I'm like, wow, you wanted to be a non-white female that bad? That's like, and this person is the last line of their family. Like they're the only male. Well, they were the only male of the family. So like he won't be able to carry the name, continue the name, his last name, his family last name. So it's really sad and definitely an example of self-hate. Yeah. There's something else I want to go back to. I'm not laughing at that situation. Somebody put a funny emoji. Yeah. Let me see. There's something else I wanted to say. Oh, the first quote. According to compensatory counter racist logic, it is no more correct to blame white people for being white than it is to blame non-white people for not being white. And I see that a lot when non-white people trash other non-white people. Like, the blame goes to white people. Why do you keep blaming the confused, the victim, like the blame goes to the white people, but they don't do it. It's always directed, no matter what a white person does. The blame always seems to go towards the non-white person. And it's really sad. And I try to, balance it out. I try to focus it the other way on white people. That's all for now.
Thanks for sharing, Ms. Helen. Very, very, very tragic that for victims of racism to go through that sort of trauma and almost self-mutilation. But that is the programming, that is the agenda, that is what racist man, racist woman want all non-white people doing. Whatever is out of balance, whatever is incorrect, and I think that is definitely a strong expression of self-hate, and to also add further my further thoughts on that is not onto what you shared about your associate, but about the quote earlier, is that if you don't want to be with what is supposed to be your complementary self, and especially if you choose to be with a white person of the same sex, then I think that is a form of self-hate, because your brain computer consciously or subconsciously probably has a disdain, has been very well trained in just hating blackness. So you, of course, you're not gonna want to create anything black by getting associated, by getting embedded with a black male, or vice versa. If you're a black male, you're not gonna want to be anything to do with a black female because you've been trained to hate the black female.
Verify.
Yes.
Verify. Let me add to that. You just reminded me of something. The person that paid for the surgery was white, a white male. He paid for the surgery. Like I said,
Great comment.
He he took care of the non-white male that had the surgery, you know, for 24/7, had to, you know, do everything. And then the non-white male, then the white male started cheating on the non-white black male, because that's not what he wanted. He wanted a female that still had the other parts, the male parts. So the white guy flew this person to 2 different countries. I think like had to have the surgery done in the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, and then did the recovery in Spain. And yeah, so spent a whole lot of money to not be with the person in the end. Okay, that's all.
Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster, but that is very sick and incorrect, and race and white supremacy in effect to a very high degree. Wow. Yeah, other folks who have possibly have quotes from 424 that they'd like to share.
I have one. It's the third one down on 424. It states, any custom, tradition, or so-called lifestyle that does not help to produce justice should be avoided. This one stood out to me due to like just a recent conversation I had with others, and they mentioned their so-called traditions and cultural and things like that. And it just got me thinking, but it doesn't produce justice, but you're just following it to follow it because they said it was a custom. So that just really stood out. I think it's very important to really analyze the things that we have been told and the things that we do on a daily basis and say, like, why do we do it? And does it produce justice?
Very well said. I definitely agree. A lot of custom, I'm going to add another word, culture. A lot of cultures as well. What people do is also worthless because it doesn't, its goal is not to produce justice. And I think we have to normalize saying that a lot of this culture, a lot of these traditions and customs and the habits we've been trained to do for generations is worthless and has to be replaced with more codified behaviors. So definitely thanks for sharing that. Excellent.
And then one other thing, just to add to that, is also thinking about, when we're thinking about culture, also think about like all the facets of the culture. So food, for instance, like I've been a vegan for almost a year now. It's my second round. And it's just thinking about like the different foods that I'm consciously eating every day. I wouldn't eat it if I was following the cultural food that I normally would eat, especially when it comes to like quote unquote holidays. Just really thinking about that, because most of them are very greasy and just like not good for the body, but just being conscious and really thinking about different facets that we participate in, or if you do participate in it, just really ask yourself why and if it does produce justice.
I think that is also a good one in relation to the one I had also on 425, which says, think whatever you put into your body or mind will either build it up or tear it down. So thinking about food, but not only food, but just media, sounds, noises, energy, I think you can make it as simple as possible. This will either build you up or tear you down.
Hello. Quote on page 424: avoid casual visits into a person's private space. That was really easy for me, but it's not really easy for my attempted family and associates. And they just don't understand. They want to come by, they want to visit, and I'm like, no, that's, what's the constructive value? What are we gonna do? I mean, plus it's COVID right now, right? So yeah, but it's really hard to get people to break this habit of just hanging out, quote unquote, visiting you and, not doing anything constructive. Another quote from 425: do not be possessed by your possessions. Collecting sneakers and, being obsessed with Jordans and clothes and jewelry and all that stuff. And in the end, it starts owning you. You have to maintain that stuff. You, instead of, focusing on yourself and, learning about racism and counter racist moves, you're focusing on the possessions, on the things that you have in the closet, or, things that you're hoarding or collecting. And, it's just not constructive. That's all.
Very well said. Thanks for sharing. I agree. It is hard for victims not only to I think to understand the word no in general, but also in the context of the quote. No longer wanting to like loiter in each other's homes. It's very odd for them when you like limit access to only constructive things, which is very necessary. And I think I would have saved a lot of time, energy, and misery had I applied this quote in my earlier years, and even as early as late as last year, before I had access to the code.
Me too.
425. Avoid thinking that because one person looks alike another, that both persons are alike in their thought, speech, and action. And I'm like, this is like, to me, this is common sense, but perhaps it's because I'm a twin. Even though I am a twin, I would look at my twin brother and I would see a totally, unique individual. I never thought he looked like me. I never, I didn't think his thoughts were similar to mine, and nor did I think his speech was similar to mine. I thought he was his own like person. So, but I would always get confused with him. So like that was more confusing. So I think this is very codified. We're very logical. We should yeah, and even me meeting other twins, I never thought like these people looked maybe they would look similar, but I never thought they would be alike. And people would often assume that me and my twin are like the same person, are very similar in our personalities, which is not necessarily the case. So I appreciate this quote. And the only other one I have from 425 is, if you choose to seek happiness, do so by seeking ways to produce justice. So yeah, the best way to try to be happy is to try to solve the race problem. Great advice, great purpose for a person to live by. I think.
Yeah, that one was a pretty good one. One that oftentimes I won't say I struggle with, but it still gets me sometimes because dealing with other victims of racism, you might feel that they feel the same way about racism, the same way that you do, or they are willing to make the strides and efforts, especially make the strides and efforts to produce a system of justice. But that is oftentimes not the case. And especially just because they may have experienced some racism. They may admit that they've experienced some racism because they may admit they've experienced some racism, but they still do not think the same way or feel the same way about producing a system of justice. So that was an important one, something that I have to remind myself of constantly.
Very, very constructive for victims to even be attempting such things. So very well said. Mr. Ray 1/0.
Yes, I was trying to see if anyone had any thoughts from the quote on page 425. A true marriage has guarantees. There is no way for any non-white person who is subject to white supremacy racism to guarantee that which is required to make a marriage. I'll mute my line.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think the quote makes sense. And if you read Area 8, you can find out why. ProduceJustice.com. Buy the book. Any folks want to chime in or share further quotes?
My thoughts on that specific quote is I would also agree that it is true. Being under a system of racism, white supremacy, being a victim, I absolutely have no way to guarantee anything that would make a marriage. So I still think it holds some constructive value to at least attempt, but definitely cannot guarantee that whatever it takes to make a marriage, that is something that as a victim I can produce. So we can have I'm sure it was in here somewhere, but an attempted marriage, an attempted constructive relationship.
Yeah, I agree. It's really not that constructive to attempt a marriage unless you really have constructive reasons for wanting to get married, like you're trying to like consolidate wealth or maintain wealth or combine wealth or whatever that may mean. And also keep the understanding that white people can come destroy your wealth or take your wealth at any moment. So that quote is very accurate. The only
I agree with what 0566 said. I feel like that will be kind of like not the only reason, but that's like one of my big reasons, because you have people around you that are trying to, how can I put it, like get to you, and the only person you can kind of trust is not in your family, it's your care mate. So it's like, well, if I'm gonna get married for this constructive reason, because then I'll know that my care mate and my child will be okay, kind of thing, because you have more of a say so, if that makes sense.
I think it does. 426 from.
Is anybody married?
Oh.
According to that quote.
Oh, was that all, Mr. Williams?
I'm sorry?
Was that all you wanted to share?
I just wanted to ask a question.
Oh, please do.
And that question was, according to that quote, is there anyone on this planet or in the known universe that is married? According to that quote.
I don't know.
Yes.
Mr. Williams. Mr.
How about
Williams.
being white people?
Exactly. White people.
Right. That's
White people. What guarantees do white people have?
Employment.
Oh
Around.
no. White people get fired all the time.
And they can find a job easy too through friends and family. And just being white.
There's no guarantee of that. I mean, they, under the system of racism and white supremacy, they have a better chance of finding a job than black people. That's for sure.
Correct.
You know, but there's no guarantee that they can find employment.
No guarantee.
Just something to think about. Just something to think about. I didn't have any intention of putting anybody on the spot.
No worries. No.
Now that I read that quote more in depth, no person in the known universe may be married.
Okay, so here's another question. What is the purpose of that quote then? That you might have to ask Mr. Fuller about that. Of course, white people have, under this system, they got better chances of doing just about anything when compared to black people.
I suspect if I were to ask Mr. Fuller about that, his answer may lead back to a united independent approach, since no non-white person at least can be truly married.
Yeah, well, that's a given. So that's the way it used to be expressed in the code. I haven't read the 2016 book, but it used to be expressed that in a prison of injustice. Now, the entire universe is a prison of injustice, if you can imagine that, So if white people are married, then all you have is non-white people looking through the bars at white people who are married, if they are married, right? And trying to duplicate their behavior. So it used to be expressed that black people will attempt marriage. Now, in the process of attempting marriage, the black people also have to be in the process of producing justice, because they'll only be married under a system under a system of justice, not under a system of racism and white supremacy. That's the way it used to be expressed. It's totally impossible, in other words, for black people to be married under the system of racism and white supremacy. That's the way it used to be expressed. So I'm not sure how Mr. Fuller expresses that nowadays.
A good example of like this area, well, the entire book, but this portion of the book as well is a great resource for formulating questions to ask Neely Fuller Jr. Before we continue, was there folks who wanted to add more thoughts on the concept of marriage? All right, 426. There is no way to talk about racism, white supremacy, and tell the truth and make constructive suggestions based on telling the truth without offending many white people and embarrassing many non-white people. And it's quite unfortunate that this has become that this is a reality. And I wonder, is it the conditioning or just regular subhuman effects, well, subhuman reactions to racism and white supremacy? Is it just natural for white people to get offended when exposed to the truth, and non-white people to get embarrassed when exposed to the truth in regards to white supremacy? Um, I don't know. I just think this quote is very, very interesting. I think it holds true as well. Again, on 426, the white supremacist, racist man, and racist woman collectively are masters of fear. Therefore, expect most of non-white people to fear them. And what I see, the collective, it's I don't know if I see fear. I don't know if I see non-white people fearing white people. I see almost see like a disregard for white people. Like white people are almost invisible to non-white people. Um, but maybe I'm incorrect, and maybe the all the distractions and the avoidance and the ghetto culture that is constantly um, refined amongst victims of racism. Perhaps that is an indication of the fear, but I don't know. I kind of see it as just a disregard for white people and an indication of how confused um, how we are as a collective about what white people are doing and what's happening on planet Earth. And I paused it to see if folks have things to share.
I wanted to my audio kind of got screwed up a little bit there, so I only caught that end of it. But I think that non-white people are most non-white people are absolutely terrified of white people. Before I go any further, can you tell me what page that quote was on again?
426.
Yeah, I think
third one from third one.
Oh yeah, I think because most things under system of racism, white supremacy are a reaction to racism. So ghetto glorification. I mean, I see just kind of a lot of the actions. I see non-white people, Black people going at each other constantly all the time about their looks, their appearances, about how the way that they act, because they can't say what they want to say to white people. I think the way that non-white people interact with each other is, especially the violent ways that we interact, the non-constructive ways we interact with one another, oftentimes is largely due to the fear that they have of white people. Because once many non-white people start getting together and acting constructively together, evidence has shown that white people come in and start producing that fear, start producing the killings. And I think many non-white people have taken notice of that. So rather than getting together and being constructive, they don't want to make the masters of fear, the white people, upset. So it's best just to be as non-constructive with one another as possible.
Is it correct to assume that there would be an intelligent fear?
What do you mean by intelligent fear?
Knowing what would most likely happen to you, upsetting white people, afraid to be constructive.
I think a lot of it is maybe like subconscious. I don't think it's like outright like, oh, we're gonna be non-constructive, or we're gonna act not non-constructive so we don't cause attention to ourselves. I think many of those actions or those interactions are subconscious. It reminds me a lot of like Black fear and the ISIS papers specifically. Just the like learning about all the people who came before, like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, etc., and the others. Just them being the two most popular. Just knowing what happened to them, you know, Black people are afraid to be like that.
What do you mean by intelligent fear?
Say again, Edwards.
I was asking what he meant by intelligent fear.
Having a fear of being constructive, whether consciously or subconsciously, knowing that you may suffer from your adversary.
Thank you.
.426. So far, none of the quotes and none of the cultures that have been produced by the people of the known universe have resulted in justice or peace. I think it's very significant, and this is my first like realization that quotes is like derived from cultures, and quotes are just like small groups of people doing certain things, and culture is just what people do. So very interesting the decoding of this word. And if your culture or whatever we're doing is not intended to produce justice, balance between people on planet Earth, then is it really worth doing? Could time and energy be spent on trying to produce a system of justice? Because there's been hundreds and thousands of courts and probably cultures, and we haven't not once probably experienced actual peace, let alone a system of justice to the likes that is defined in this text. The last one that I have from 426, justice, balance between people does not exist. Those who have the will to produce justice do not have the skill to produce it. Those who have the skill to produce it do not have the will. A very tragic predicament that we are in. But we must do all that we can to get the white people to help us produce justice or kill all of us, because they are highly agitated when Black people or non-white people are trying to be constructive. Even more so probably when we are talking about the race problem. And if we could get non-white people talking about the race problem, thinking about the race problem in an effective number 24/7 across the globe, the white people, they can't stand that. They won't be able to handle that. They would have to kill all of us or help us produce a system of justice. I may be incorrect. Folks would like to share any from 426.
or any from any in general before I continue on.
Constructive activity should always be the most desirable ways of using your time and energy. And I wish that I had learned this. I wish I knew this when I was younger, like in my teens and 20s, instead of hanging out in clubs and going to strip joints and stuff like that. I should have been reading and learning about racism and reading Neely Fuller's work and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. So that was a lot of time wasted in my 20s. Let's see what else do I have. Oh, that's it for now.
Yeah,
I have.
Go ahead, Nadia.
Oh, I have what says, beware of people who are not willing to define the words that they use. This is actually something that frequently happens. Like when you ask someone to define something or explain it or whatever words that are used, but I understand that we have been conditioned to just say certain words just to say them because either they sound good or that's like the order of a sentence. But I think oftentimes like people use words that don't really fit to the sentence and don't really make sense in a sentence when you actually define it, but aren't able to define it because they don't know what it means either. So very interesting. I just think it just reminds me to myself to make sure that I understand the words that I use and really think about it when I'm putting them with other words together, because then when you put them together, it actually changes meanings of sometimes. So just things to be thoughtful of.
Yeah, and I think I find that very common in the education area, like so-called teachers is like not wanting to define the words that they're using or not wanting to answer the questions from students, especially younger students who are younger children. So I think very, very important. And yeah, thanks for sharing, Miss B, Miss Nanaya.
I wanted to comment on what Nanaya said. That is something that I've ran in particular with when speaking to other victims about racism. They oftentimes are the ones that become the most frustrated when we're talking about like defining the words that they're using. So that was just an observation that I've had. I'm trying to think. That's just something I wanted to add. I don't know if anybody has had a similar experience to that.
Yes, I have. I just went through this about last week with my attempted sister. I don't use the term responsibility, but she used the term. So I asked her to give me a definition. She gave me an example, not a definition. I said, I prefer a definition. It's okay to give me an example, but where's your definition? Oh, I don't do that, this, that, and the other. I saw it was about to get into conflict. So I was like, okay, let me calm this down or whatever. So eventually, hours later, she sent me the dictionary version of responsibility. I said, okay, fine. Now we can proceed. I just want to improve on our communication. That's the only reason why I asked for a definition. And I find that I come in contact with that too when I ask non-white victims or non-white people for definitions. It seems to frustrate them, or like, oh, well, I'm giving you an example, or you know what I'm talking about. Like, no, I want to understand you better. I want to communicate better. That's my whole thing. Yeah. A quote that I want to go to is the words in every song should produce constructive thoughts that cause people to want to do constructive deeds. And I definitely agree with this. I want to try and put music, beats together with Neely Fuller talking and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and Dr. Ben and Bobby Hemmett. And I think that if we can get like music in the background of them talking, I think maybe it could attract other non-white people. That's it for now.
Agreed, Miss Helen. And in regards to what you said earlier, I think the system is set up to like if a victim is gonna find counter racist logic and counter racist material, it's gonna be very, very hard for that victim, and it's gonna take quite a while, as is evident for a lot of victims finding out about the race problem at very at not late in their lives, but definitely later than they would have liked, myself included. So thanks for sharing, and very constructive suggestion, mashing up constructive sounds and constructive words in order to get more people focused and thinking about the race problem and how we can could solve it overnight. Go ahead, Mr. Ray 1/0.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I wanted to go back to the aforementioned. We were talking about fear. Oh, 05. Is it okay if I read a small excerpt out of the ISIS papers?
Oh, no problem at all.
Okay, this is going to be on page 156 under Black Fear. However, it has been demonstrated that the almost certain consequence, of a pattern of consciously determined resistance to and destruction of white supremacy is death at the hands of white supremacy advocates, those who see and understand white supremacy as necessary to white survival. Even young Black children are able to perceive and articulate that if you try to help Black people, you will be killed. When I asked a 10-year-old boy, don't you want to study hard in school so that you can help Black people? He immediately answered no, giving the above explanation. The chill of this reality inherent in the maintenance of white supremacy does not escape Black children, and it most certainly does not escape their elders, although the latter are more sophisticated and know better than to admit the same openly. This fear of death at the hands of the white supremacy collective, because it cannot be admitted aloud by the adult Black population, has been repressed. The result of covering the fear has been the emergence of the sick protective logic that there is no longer a problem of white supremacy, except in England, perhaps, and in Southern Africa. For Blacks in the US, all of that has been solved. I'll just end right there.
Thanks for reading that very, very constructive piece from the ISIS papers. Another piece of counter-racist material that all victims should have in their collection. Mr. Kwaku, did you have something to share?
I did, but I forgot.
No worries. May come back to your brain computer. 428. Do not worry about when racism and white supremacy will end. Codify what you say and what you do to help end it, and say and do what you codify. Correct counter-racist codification should be your major focus. And yeah, today I was doing some reflecting. I think a lot. I don't know how often I reflect. And I was like, I really have this pain has really caused me to fall off on my war training. So I followed a line from a white supremacist from the video game called Gears of War, Marcus Phoenix. He says, fight through the pain. And so I did my war training, worked out, even though my mouth is feeling really incorrect. So I really appreciate this quote, because a part of my code is to do my war training to keep my mind and body in correct health, shape, form, and conditions. So yeah, it's really important for all victims to have a code and be serious about the code, because we have been made a clowning, non-serious, silly group of people. So we want to be the total opposite of that. So being serious is necessary, and being serious about our codification is something. I don't know if I should use this word, but I should see that something sacred as well. Any folks like to chime in, comment, share some quotes before I continue on 428? .428. During the existence of white supremacy racism, it is always correct to believe that any white person who was able to be a racist white supremacy, racist white supremacist probably is one. This could do so much for to avoid disappointment and to avoid danger if we just had this in our brain computers that every white person is a racist suspect. If they could walk around, if they could think, they're a racist suspect until proven otherwise. And this is not something bad or something negative. This is just logic, following logic, using logic to protect ourselves and solve the problem. It is same page. It is correct to know and understand that darkness serves a great and constructive purpose. It should not be feared or hated. Most of the known universe is darkness. And understanding racism and white supremacy, you're really able to understand everything. And like this whole fear of the dark, of like little kids being afraid of the dark, I think that is a expression of racism and white supremacy. Because I don't think those kids are afraid of the dark when they're outside in the nighttime. So I think this is a really constructive quote. We shouldn't see darkness as something scary or evil, or we shouldn't even associate it with those things. It's just that white people have trained us so well to associate darkness with everything bad. And just it's in everything. It's in all thought and speech is like embedded with words and sayings that dark equals bad, dark equals scary or violent. And this is just kind of going into a race cold war. Is this like the language has to be totally eliminated from our vocabulary, and these associations as well, the mental associations we have with darkness being bad or scary. Because now that I am less confused, it's very annoying to hear a child or any person say, "I'm afraid of the dark." I'm like, why are you afraid of the dark for? You're afraid of black people? But I digress a tad bit. Folks have any quotes they'd like to share, or from this assortment of posts, they didn't find anything worth sharing?
People who agree to have sexual intercourse with each other should also agree to have no secrets from each other. And I also want to go back to another quote about like having your health, being able to see and having all your limbs and everything like that. I remember as a child, elementary school, like trying to prepare myself just in case I lost my hand, so writing with the opposite hand. I'm right-handed, so trying to write with my left, and practicing, and also trying to practice with my feet just in case I lost both hands or my arms or anything like that. And I was just trying to prepare myself. I don't know why I thought something was going to happen, but yeah.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Thanks for
for sure. You're a very prepared toddler.
Thank you for sharing. I also did that, which is quite interesting. I used to practice all the time because I thought like I needed to be prepared for anything. So I'm glad I wasn't alone. But on that note, I also have one, study anything and everything that may be of constructive value. Make record of what you most need to know and remember. This stood out to me only because I think about when I read things and I don't write it down. It's one of those 50-50 chance. Maybe I'll remember it, maybe I won't, but I think making record is very important. Still iffy about digital records, so I'm still like writing things down, but yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Miss Naya, Miss B. From 429, no parts of a person's exposed body should be regarded as shameful. Only parts of a person's thought, speech, and or action should be regarded as shameful. I think I really appreciate this one. It makes a lot of sense, and it's the sort of correct thinking we should all attempt. Because I don't care about how a person looks. I really don't. You know, what are you thinking? Are you thinking about murdering and supporting white supremacy, or are you thinking about producing a system of justice? And are you willing to produce a system of justice immediately? That's the important thing. We have been trained to be a very vain group of people, white and non-white people. So and that ties into the confusion and deception. You know, they taught us to focus on the outwards, the outward of everything, literally the outward appearance, and everything being outward, for not focus on anything inwards, being on the thoughts, what people are thinking, what are they up to, what are they truly about. So this quote is really significant and constructive, and it's an indication of a person is really serious, because we shouldn't be concerned about what a person's garments, but what is a person thought, speech, and behavior in this relation to my existence and to my goals. 430. All entertainment, including travel, singing, dancing, sexual interaction, etc., should be designed to help promote constructive work. All work should be designed to help produce justice. The production of justice, correctness, and peace should be the only form of fun. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, man. It's just so tragic because I read these quotes and I'm just reminded of how well we have been trained against constructive activities. So yeah, we must accelerate the growth and the effective numbers to solve this problem before the damage gets even more severe. One who teaches is either promoting mental health or promoting insanity. This quote is very significant. A lot of us have been indoctrinated and lied to by racist men and racist women in these schools for a very long time. And a lot of us have also been victimized by these so-called teachers who were in fact race soldiers, brain trashing us by teaching us insanity, basically. So this quote is epic. It sheds so much truth about what is happening in the system of white supremacy, because I didn't start to develop any resemblance of a correct mental health or what some would call a healthy mental health until I had access to counter racist material. And yeah, and that allowed me to begin to think much more constructively and correctly, because yeah. So I appreciate this, and I'm sure many other folks will. Before I cover the last two quotes I have, I'm gonna meet the line, see if folks would like to chime in.
There is no way to talk about, I know this quote was mentioned before, but about the being white people being offended and non-white people being embarrassed. One of my favorite lines, white people are not ignorant. And when I say that, when I post that, like, you know, online and stuff, white people be like, oh, what are you talking about? We're not ignorant, this, that, the other. And then non-white people, their response would be, oh, white people are stupid, they are ignorant, this, that, and the other. And this is where the quote comes into play. So if white people are ignorant, then what does that make us? If we are non-white people, if we're under the oppression of white people, if they're so stupid, if they're ignorant, then what does that make us? And that's where the embarrassment and the embarrassment comes in for the non-white people. Yeah. And another thing, one way to learn how to do something of constructive value is to volunteer to help someone who is doing something of constructive value and who is willing to teach you to do what is being done. I'm listening to an audiobook at this time called The Miseducation of the Negro. And they mentioned how the white people, when they graduate college, how they automatically do this internship. They're basically volunteering at the job that they're going to work at in the future. And how non-white people, they're not able to do that because they have to, they have to make money. They can't, work for free. And those white kids who graduate college and do the internship, how they have that leg up in life because of that experience, because they have someone to take them under their wing and show them the ropes and this, that, and the other. And yeah, that's all for now.
Thank you, Ms. B. Very, very insightful comments. And then folks like to chime in. Oh, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you for that, Ms. B. On page 431, it states, just lost it. Oh, okay. 431, it states, the less you learn that is of constructive value, the more trouble you are going to make for yourself and others. I think this is an important quote as well. Oftentimes, victims, well, me myself included, need to focus more on learning things of constructive value. I noticed that when you're learning things that should be considered use of time and energy. So if you're learning something of constructive value, you are learning to do something constructive that will ultimately help you in the future. When you are not learning something of constructive value, you are using your time and energy poorly. And therefore you will be, for lack of a better word, caught slipping later on when it matters most.
Yeah, I also have that one highlighted. That's a great.
I shouldn't use metaphors. I'm sorry.
I also had that one highlighted as well. I think for a person who does not have any constructive knowledge, still has a brain computer that does think and speak. So not only the trouble that they are also causing is spreading confusion and helping other victims to use their time and energy poorly. So this quote is really important. There's a quote somewhere that exists that says like misery loves company. And I understand the racism and white supremacy. I totally understand that quote now. Yeah, I see Mr. Ray.
Yeah, that's it.
Has to.
Sorry, that is a quote that I've definitely come to understand as well. Misery does love company.
Mr. Ray, would you like to chime in?
Yes, sir. The suspected white supremacist known as Jeff Bezos came to mind as I was looking at this quote at the bottom of page 430. And I'm naming him because of his recent trip up into outer space. If you are not the healthiest, wealthiest, smartest, and most powerful person in the known universe, you should regard yourself as a silly person if you brag on yourself about anything at any time for any reason. I'll mute my line.
Yeah, I don't know any victims of racism who say they've accomplished what Jeff Bezos has accomplished. So don't think you have much to brag about. 431. This is the final quote I have to share. This book is full of excellent quotes. Every victim of racism, every Black and non-white person who is serious about solving the race problem should go to producejustice.com and buy this book and buy the word guide so you can have some serious artillery in terms of helping you to become more constructive and solve the race problem. So, producejustice.com, buy this book. We need your help. The planet needs your help. Anyways, 431. The most valuable part of any relationship is the revelation of truth. And this is like from offspring to attempted parent, siblingship, associateship, boss employee. It just truth would make everything so much more simple and easier. But because there's like no truth, everything is so convoluted and full of conflict. And it's just been time that something changes drastically to diminish, if not totally eradicate, all conflict on planet Earth. And I think truth would do a lot to diminish conflict on planet Earth. But white people have a high aversion to truth, I suspect. So it's going to be non-white people, especially Black people. It's going to be them to be the ones to show by example how to exist in truth and how to use truth to produce constructive results, or all of us should be willing to die trying if our goal of producing justice cannot be accomplished. Are there folks who had other quotes to share from the pages, or should we get into closing comments?
Some white supremacist races are greatly skilled at claiming any identity that would best help give them the most power in their interactions with others. I'm going to call that, instead of interactions, I'm going to say confusion with others. And I've heard white people call themselves Scandinavian, Hispanic, Spaniards, conservatives, liberals, everything but white. Even mixed. Women. Yeah. So I think that's all to cause confusion. And that's it for now.
Yeah, it's one of their masterful ways they cause confusion by not just being straight with, are you white or not? Because I don't know what a Scandinavian looks like. I don't know what a Hispanic looks like. I'm super confused about what this Hispanic entity is.
So, are you white? Yes or no? Very simple. White people need to get into a habit of being able to do that. Any more folks like to share any quotes? Going once.
Okay, one last quote. I have a question at the end of my quote, so please listen clearly. A person has only one birthday, the day that he or she is born. The other days are birth days, followed by one death day. So, anybody have any suggestions or anything that they do that, you know, used to be on their birthday or whatever? Like anything, like something that I do on my so-called birthday, well, breath day. I take off from the plantation. I make sure I pamper myself. I go get a massage. It's more about self-care, which is, you know, rejuvenating myself because I go through so much emotionally at work and, well, the job that I'm allowed to have, and, you know, on the plantation, and just in life daily with racism being, you know, coming at me from all different directions, from advertisement, from white people, you know, this, that, and the other. So there's just certain things that I do. So I want to know, what do y'all do on your breath day to, you know, rejuvenate or what have you? If you don't find the question constructive, please ignore.
This past breath day of mine, I turned 34. I went for a 7-mile hike. So that's how I treated myself. Very invigorating.
Right on, right on. Oh yeah, that's also something I do. I make sure that I go to the gym, take that class that I've been wanting to take, like a cyclist class or this and the other. So yeah, anybody else?
For my birthday, I try to, well, recently learned about racism and white supremacy.
Breath day, not birthday, breath day, breath day.
Breath day. Thank you. For my last birthday, I usually try to get together with other fellow attempted counter racists and share a constructive meal together, and more often than not turn into an educational opportunity to learn something that we've never learned before. I can't remember what it was last time, but that's usually something I do for my birthday. Try to learn something or do something I've never done before.
Right on, Kwaku, for the open air grouping that you did. Anybody else?
For me, it's business as usual on my birthday. But I may supply myself with extra rations, or may share a bit of my time with some attempted counter racists or associates. But yeah, as nowadays, it's just business as usual.
That's good. That's good. Nana, y'all?
All my birthdays are all different. I try to do something that I've never done before, and also take off from the plantation. But that's pretty much it. And also, I love taking naps, so I always try to get a nap in too on my birthday. It's like one of the things I enjoy.
Right on, right on.
Thanks for the question, Ms. D.
Miss Johnson, what about Miss Johnson? Maybe she's in a noisy environment. Okay, what's next?
Yeah, are there any closing quotes that folks wanted to share before we get into closing comments?
In their personal sexual attractions, most people are often not logical. Like like for me, something that I used to love is a baritone, like a deep voice. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, how is that person going to treat me? How do they feel about counter racist work? What do they do? What they do about reading? Like, do they read? What are their hobbies? Only a deep voice. Like, what is that going to do? Anyway, yeah, that's my last quote.
Yeah, very, very well said. And like, yeah, our what we're attracted to has definitely been implanted in us. A lot of victims of racism. I won't say myself because I have always been attracted to all body types. But it's really interesting to see that some victims are really just trained to be attracted to like these skeletal looking white women, are light skinned, just light skinned, extremely light skinned skeletal looking females. And I may be out of code for using this terminology, but it's really interesting what we have been trained, and now they're trying to train us to be attracted to the so-called transgender. So really interesting. Go up, Mr. Ray 150.
Yes. I like my ending quote would be from page 423. Work, 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 and more work should be welcome. Constructive work will always help make you a better person than you thought you could be. Constructive work should be regarded as fun. We need to stop being so lazy as a collective. I mean,
Yeah, I would say we need to, as a collective, like better counter the damage that is being done to our to us. But that quote is very significant. I read it earlier, and I definitely appreciate it. And it's a great mentality to have. We should all have it. Extremely challenging, but we should be up for the challenge, and we should welcome such challenges as victims of racism. Go ahead, Ms. Nadia.
My ending quote will be: think before you speak, think before you act. That's pretty much what I feel like I've been saying the entire time with all the quotes I've been providing today, is just making sure that I think before I speak every time, and also think before I act, because trauma is something else. But yeah, so I think it's thinking before I act or react, if you will. So that will be my ending quote. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. I wonder how many Black females and Black males would not be in greater confinement if they would have thought, what's gonna happen if I get into this car? What's gonna happen if I go into this? If I enter this if I go into this door? What's gonna happen if I pull this trigger? What's gonna happen before I answer incorrect act? So yeah, thinking is very important, very significant quote. I'm going to see if folks have other closing comments, closing quotes to share.
For my closing comment, the quotes definitely get my brain computer thinking in the most constructive way possible. I'm going to take Ms. Helen B's advice and write some of them down on flashcards and look at them throughout the day until I have them memorized. So I have some of my favorite ones memorized. I found this a constructive use of my time and energy. And thank you all for the discussion. Looking forward to the next one. Constructive business meeting, I should say.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, would you like to share a closing comment? And other folks as well. I don't know if we just wanted to do a closing quote or a closing comment as well, but
All right, I think that may be everyone. I will go ahead and share my closing comment. These quotes are really awesome. I read them and I experience like a surge of energy, like a surge of delight in my being, because there's like they're really short but still very packed with constructive information, and yeah, looking forward to finishing it. Yeah, truly appreciate everyone's comments, everyone's sharing, and I'm going to adjourn there.